I'm fat, I'm black, and I'm a woman. Remember those three words. I'm fat, I'm black, and I'm a woman. That's what you see when you first look at me. Fat, black, and woman. But there's so much more to me behind that. So many layers behind my skin. 1,001 thoughts behind my eyes. I'm fat, I'm black, and I'm a woman.
The weight is doing a lot, man. I can't say in the black community the weight is doing a lot because I have women who are calling in who don't even realize that it's an issue. I had a woman call in the other day and I said, ma'am, at your height and your weight, I mean, no offense, ma'am, but you're the size of a middle linebacker. And she said, no, I'm not. I'm like, and I went and pulled up Lawrence Taylor, NFL great. I'm like, and I was like, he's 4 inches taller than you. She was shocked. So how do we get this back on track? Well, when 4 out of 5 of our sisters are overweight and no one can tell you nothing, I don't know who can get through to them. We have to start having women be honest with each other. Because when you're raised in our culture, mom leaves the house. So they may hear it from me, but until women start actually having, let's just use it, thoughtful, respectful conversations about, hey, we need to probably do this for our own health, for men or whatever, because men don't care why you do it. We just want it there. Because here's the thing. Men can't turn off and on their provider. If a man falls on hard times, stop producing, we can judge him. And if a man's not masculine, we can judge him. Well, we got to have that standard back up for men and women. And the question is, are people really willing to do it? And I honestly have more faith that they are than they're not.
What's up, study group? Welcome to Black History Student. I'm your host, Black Butterfly. Today we'll be discussing body dysmorphic disorder and the myth of the big fat black woman, because it's important for black women to understand how the dominant society uses politics and racism to control not only white people's perception of bodily beauty, but also black societies, especially black women. There's a rich history explaining how ideals of black women, specifically the curvaceous ones with large butts and thick thighs, became viewed as big, fat, and unattractive. These women are considered lazy and unappealing, and at the highest risk of obesity-related deaths. Black women's bodies have been compared to a European standard of beauty since the 1600s, and really amplified as recent as the 20th century. Initially, black men worshipped thick black women, those that people of no color would deem fat and undesirable. But over the centuries, as they were adopting the white idea of manhood, black men eventually accepted white standard of feminine beauty for black women. This explains why so many black men, especially those who prefer whiteness, entertain and promote the big fat black woman as being unattractive and ghetto, while slim women, especially white ones, are the most appealing.
See it correcting itself anyway soon. So people are going to sit there and read the book. They're going to judge the book by its cover. If you speak a certain way, act a certain way, look a certain way, they're going to assume you are that way and not give you a chance. And unfortunately, a lot of black women have negative stereotypes that are attributed to the black community, and it's on you to prove those stereotypes wrong.
Yep. Right.
And the big one that people don't want to talk about is African-American women in general don't fucking exercise. Y'all are fat.
Well, that's
a big one. 187 pounds.
I can't speak for them. I'm on the treadmill 45 minutes.
First of all, we're already naturally
how much do you weigh?
So
I'm 187.
That's the average.
Yeah. I mean,
the average Japanese woman.
I'm 150. I have a lot of slender.
Hold up. 187. I'm 175 and I'm 6'2". The average Japanese woman weighs 120 pounds. The average American woman is already 170. That means the average white woman is probably like 160.
But we also, but if you go to your doctor right now, he'll tell you that when it comes to African American women or African American people, the BMI scale is not attributed to us.
No,
so for me, so hold on, and this is a fact. I'm a brand ambassador for a plastic surgery place, New Life Plastic Surgery. Shout out to them. But this doesn't attribute to us. Why? Because we just have a different demographic when our hips are wider. We just are shaped differently. So the average woman in a different race weighing what I weigh, she would have a gut. She would have fat places.
It's important to discuss the history of body obsession and its legacy, because the historical facts directly correlates to why a large percentage of black women hate their appearance and feel like outliers in white society. Furthermore, It must be known that mainstream society uses the black fat stigma and white thin ideal as distinctions between race and class hierarchies. There's a lot of history to unpack. However, it's essential to have a holistic understanding of races and political structures that control the way black female bodies are viewed by all peoples. Since most black women are physiologically bigger than average white women, fat phobia allows the dominant society to place the big fat black woman at the bottom class and cement her as being aesthetically inferior to white women. This racist ideology is the reason black women suffer from body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD. BDD is a mental illness that involves obsessively concentrating on a real or an imaginary flaw. According to Johns Hopkins Medicine, people that suffer from BDD, they're either constantly checking themselves in the mirror or avoiding mirrors altogether. They try to hide certain body parts, maybe wearing a hat or a scarf or some makeup. They're constantly exercising or grooming themselves or comparing themselves to other people. They're always asking other people whether they look okay or how do they look. They don't believe other people when they say they look good. They avoid social activities, maybe not going out of the house, especially in the daytime. Many of them see healthcare providers about their appearance, even seeking unnecessary plastic surgeries. Some of them pick at their skin with their fingers or tweezers. Many of them feel anxious, depressed, and ashamed. Some of them even think of committing suicide. Although many black women suffer from BDD as a result of not meeting white standards of beauty, history has shown that many white men have lusted after big fat black women since they first laid eyes on them in Africa. African tribes such as the Hottentots were admired for being some of the most beautiful women in the world by white men. These women were black-skinned with large butts, thick thighs, small to large waist, and elongated labium. White men's hypocritical love-hate relationship with black women have manifested the unofficial war between black and white women. White women despise the supposed fat black female body, but envy it as well, for in comparison, they are pale, long, slim, and lanky, whereas black women are tan, plump, curvy, and sexually desired by their men. For this reason, white women have participated in the indoctrination of society to condemn the black female body as long as it's packaged in black skin. White women that are palpably jealous of the black female body imitates it by modifying their look to achieve an African physique, such as a big butt, thick hips, and a slim waist. Many go even further to enlarge their thin lips to look full like black women, and with their completely imitated black female appearance, only then is that body shape beautiful and acceptable. Otherwise, if it's packaged in black skin, the shape becomes big, fat, and unhealthy. The 17th and 18th centuries are referred to as the High Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, because this is a period when European scientists, philosophers, and politicians were theorizing and debating racial differences between whites and enslaved Africans to justify white supremacy in the slave trade. French and English scholars studied and wrote books about their biased and scientifically baseless theories on African bodies, especially black women's. In the 1600s, the first book ever written on race science was by a French white supremacist named Francois Bernier. He's credited for establishing the fundamental physical differences between Europeans and non-Europeans, with an intense focus on the women in various categories. Author Sabrina Strings wrote a book called Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, where she discusses how Bernier's flawed work created the different types of races. Sabrina said that in 1684, Bernier sketched out his theory in a 3-page manifesto, explaining that he nevertheless found that common unities of physical form across national boundaries warranted a new system for classifying mankind, a system he called types of race. The term race meant all the world's people had a race, one that could be identified by both where they lived and their external physical features. Now, according to Bernier, the supreme race had white or sun-tinged olive skin, like Europeans, Native Americans, and the Mediterranean peoples. The second race had black skin that he argued was the result of their sperm and blood. This supposed learned man went on to publish more theories about African people's black skin being caused by a superabundance of black bile beneath the skin. He even absurdly suggested that an overflow of black bile could cause gastrointestinal disorders and weight gain. Subsequently, Bernier defined the third race, mostly Eastern Asians, as having yellow-tinged skin. Sabrina Strings says that these ideas were to be read and expanded upon by subsequent scientists and philosophers whom were deeply invested in maintaining or extending the slave trade. In terms of Bernier's estimation of women, he used race to make judgments about feminine loveliness. Bernier wrote a note about the so-called Hottentots. Hottentot was a derogatory name created by Dutch settlers. Bernier wrote that Hottentots are usually smaller, thinner, with uglier faces. However, after traveling to Egypt, Bernier wrote that, certainly, there are lovely ones, ugly ones to be found everywhere. I have seen some real beauties in Egypt, which put me in the mind of the fair and famed Cleopatra. Among the blacks of Africa, I have also seen some very beautiful women who did not have thick lips and snub noses. I have encountered 7 or 8 in various places who were of such astonishing beauty, with aquiline nose, small mouth, coral lips, ivory teeth, large bright eyes, gentle features, and a bosom and everything else of upper perfection. At Mocha, I saw several of them completely naked, waiting to be sold, and I can tell you, there could be nothing lovelier in the world to see. Bernier affirms racial differences in beauty, certifying black women's attractiveness by using the existing standard for white women: aquiline nose, small mouth, coral lips, ivory teeth, large bright eyes, and gentle features. In this way, black women who were good looking were those with features similar to European white women. Black people, he claimed, were mindless, self-gratifying automations who were given up to the pleasures of the table. Those great eaters, he said, intemperate epicures who seem to live only to eat, have a stupid look, always digesting. They become incapable of thinking. In this way, they were distinct from whites. He elaborated, in our white species, the forehead is projecting and the mouth retreating, as if we were rather designed to think than to eat. In the Negro species, the forehead is retreating and the mouth projecting, as if he were made to eat rather than to think. After Bernier was permanently established as an authority in race science, a racist French nationalist named Comte de Buffon cemented the stereotype of black-skinned African women being fat, ugly, immoral, and stupid. He created the stereotypical physical identity for black Africans, claiming that they are dark-skinned and enormous. Because African lands were fertile with an abundance of food, Buffon published that this caused obesity and laziness in black-skinned women. His propaganda of African black women gluttonizing excessively is why he published They're Simple and Stupid. These theories were disseminated in texts across the world, officially branding curvaceous black women as fat, unattractive, slow-witted, greedy, and lazy. Simultaneously, white women were portrayed as naturally thin and fine amongst intellectuals of European nations. These ideals were eventually brought to the Americas during the slave trade. Ultimately, other philosophers, doctors, anthropologists, and scholars published works that maintained the ugly, big, fat black woman ideals that survive today. During the 19th century, prominent physicians were concerned about the narrow chest and lank limbs and flabby muscles and tottering steps that comprised the average white American body. These doctors contended that paleness, leanness, and malnutrition of women were particularly troubling. The New York Times published an article with the headline, "Actually Starving. A prominent New York man dies in sight of food. Why could this be so?" The article went on to say, thousands of men and women in New York are starving, although they have plenty of money to buy the best food. Sabrina Strings says that the slenderness of American girls was regarded as nothing less than a threat to the nation. An 1888 article from the Washington Post that appeared under the headline, "Are Girls Growing Smaller?" exclaimed, "The girl of period ranges from 140 pounds down in some cases to 80 pounds or less. In England and Germany, the figures are higher. 80 pounds of femininity is, of course, not much." And the writer added, "Our women will go on getting thinner and thinner until they disappear. It has happened in Boston already. The American stock can't hold his own against the big-boned, strong-built foreigner. The Irish have crowded the Yankee out of New England." 19th century doctors cautioned American society that being thin to the point of malnutrition was not only harmful to the body, but also to the nation as a whole. Despite this, white people, especially the women, doubled down on the slim ideal of beauty, ignoring physicians' recommendations. The smaller the woman, the more lovely she was, even if she was unhealthy and dying. Any amount of fat on the body was unacceptable and represented low-class status, a reputation early European Americans weren't willing to consider. Extreme slimness separated undesirable foreigners from Americans that revered themselves as the most pure, beautiful, and intellectual race on earth. During the 1800s, Northern and Western Europeans, also called the Nordics or Aryans, had completely separated themselves from the Southern and Eastern nations. These countries were responsible for spreading ideals that their peoples possessed beautiful faces and figures, while all other populations were undesirable. France, Germany, England, and other Northern and Western Europeans migrated to the United States, where their numbers dominated for many centuries. However, around the 1820s, northern and southern regions of Italy unified as a single nation, allowing the elites to increase taxes and mismanage the economy and politics. Consequently, Italians were extremely poor, and about 2.2 million fled to the US for better opportunities. Meanwhile, in Russia, after the Russian Tsar Alexander II was assassinated, the elites needed to reinstate peace and a sense of community. Therefore, they used the Russian Jews as a scapegoat, blaming them for his death. Just as Hitler did in the 20th century, Imperial Russia exterminated or violently exiled Jews from the population. Their goal was to maintain a pure Slavic nation. As a result, 1.8 million Russians and Jews fled to the US to escape persecution. Now, with the waves of migrants flocking to the US, the original Aryan population feared these undesirables would outbreed and outnumber them, prompting American elites to do something immediately. Therefore, they launched hate campaigns against all non-Aryan peoples, branding them fat, drug-infested, criminal, and mentally insane. Does this not sound familiar, Black people? Using art, magazine publications, newspapers, books, and intellectual discourse, race mixing between the various European nations and pure white Aryans was vilified. Elites encouraged selective breeding, intended to increase the superior, thin, and beautiful pure white Aryan people in the country. They said that the mixing of the various Aryan peoples of America bred the American beauties that were very tall, extremely slender, and pale white. The women of this stock represents ideal beauty to this day, as they are the famous tall, anorexic, thin, white supermodels. As a matter of fact, during the 1890s, Sabrina Strings says that artist Charles Dana Gibson came up with the new icon of beauty, an image he called the Gibson Girl. Like earlier American models, she was tall and graceful, but unlike earlier models, she was something of an athlete and an intellectual. Gibson Girl captured the American imagination. Between 1895 and 1920s, hundreds of references to the Gibson Girl appeared in publications such as the Chicago Tribune, the Washington Post, and even the Los Angeles Times. The Gibson Girl, as drawn by the artist, represented the tall, trim American woman, foremost in his own words, of British origin. All other people, including Poles, Irish, and Italians, naturally inherited fat and ugliness that threatened to pollute the pure white Aryan bloodlines. Consequently, politicians crafted anti-immigration legislation to limit the number of undesirables allowed into the country, and to ban East Asians from entering altogether. Scientists generated studies on eugenics, racial inheritance, arguing that other groups, especially women, inherit obesity, short stature, and poor intellect. American elites successfully discriminated against other white racial groups, using politicians and artists and scientists to pour racist ideals about aesthetics and superiority into the public mind. But one thing they made very clear was that poor white non-Aryan trash were rejects, but no group was lower than blacks. For this reason, it was time for doctors to provide their medicinal input to solidify the myth of the big fat black woman. Alright, study group, before I go on, please take a few seconds to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to know when new videos are released or when I go live. This is a significant way to support the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and do that for me. I'll take a moment of silence to let you do it. Okay, thank you, study group. I really appreciate your support. I really do. Now let's continue. Now, media outlet CNN played a significant role in indoctrinating society to believe that black women were the most obese based on white standards. Recall that black women from Africa were naturally thick women with large female organs, so to compare their bodies to thin and lanky women of no color was nonsensical. Nevertheless, CNN did just that, and Sabrina Strings said that one way they did it is by writing an article titled "Obesity Kills More Americans Than We Thought." She says that this headline from the health news section of CNN's website commanded readers' attention. The CNN article was momentous because it was one of many works that reported studies about the relationship between obesity, defined as a body mass index of 30 or greater, and mortality. Their article was actually published in the American Journal of Public Health. CNN obtained their data from a survey called National Health Interview Survey, and this was conducted between 1986 and 2006. During this study, they tested thousands of black and white people to assess the link between high BMI and the risk of death. Ironically, their studies found that only 5% of black men perished from obesity or related health issues, that white men expired at a rate of 15.6%, and white women had a 21.7% expiration rate. But what's more, black women perished from obesity at a rate of 26.8%. Sabrina Strings says that per the study authors, these figures should have represented a wake-up call for black women. African American women had long been recognized as having higher BMIs than any other subpopulation in the United States. But many previous analyses have suggested that black women had a lower risk of illness and death from elevated BMIs. This study provided evidence to the contrary, a signal that black women should be working harder to trim their apparently outsized figures. In an interview about the findings, sociologist Ryan Masters, the lead author of the report, underscored what he described as the substantial differences based on race or ethnicity. Still, he was careful not to let that finding overshadow the significance of the study for the broader population. Now, in additional attempts to place black women at the bottom of the racial aesthetics hierarchy, news media networks such as NBC and Fox News joined in on the dramatics, emphasizing the perils for obesity for African American women. But their racist correlation of larger black women to health issues didn't last long. Only months later did epidemiologist Catherine Flegel of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention publish findings that contradicted their previous studies. She wrote a report titled "Association of All-Cause Mortality with Overweight and Obesity Using Standard Body Mass Index Categories." In the report, Sabrina Strings says that Flegel found that overweight individuals had a 6% lower risk of death than those in the normal weight, that is, a BMI between 18 to 25 category. People with mild to moderate obesity, or a BMI of 30 to 34.9, had a mortality risk that mirrored that of people normal weight.
From the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has sounded the alarm about obesity in African American women. The department's Office of Minority Health says 4 out of 5 African American women are overweight or obese. Studies conducted in 2011 show that black women were 80% more likely to be obese than non-Hispanic white women. And from 2007 until 2010, African American girls were 80% more likely to be overweight than non-Hispanic white girls. Joining me now to talk about these stats and how black women can take charge of their health is Dr. Elaine Arterberry, a radiation oncologist at Sinai Grace Hospital in Detroit. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thanks for having me.
So those numbers are really shocking.
It's staggering.
I mean, 80 to 90% more likely to be overweight than non-white Hispanic women.
Well, it's interesting because those studies are based on body mass index, which is a calculation of height and weight. And I think most of them don't take into account that black women have a higher bone density than white women. Right, so their bones actually weigh more. So if you have a black woman who's 5'5" at 165 pounds, she's technically, based on her BMI, overweight.
Okay.
So the BMI studies don't totally account
so they don't really
account
give you
for that.
as accurate a picture.
Right. That being said, you still have a high number of black women that are way over 35 BMI, which really puts you in the overweight or obese category. I think it's a number of factors. Black women are under a tremendous amount of stress.
Right.
Depending on where they live, may not have access to grocery stores, etc. It's multifactorial. It's not as simple as women are eating too much.
Right.
I mean, that's a simplistic way of looking at it.
Or not exercising.
Or not exercising. I think it's multifactorial. And women really have to look at that and do self-examination. So many times women are, exercising or getting fit to get to a family reunion or a high school party. And really you have to look at it as a continuum. It's a lifestyle change.
Right. It is really not about dieting or losing weight. It is about trying to eat healthy all the time. Right?
And making small little steps. For example, this month at our hospital, we have a campaign that's actually gone beyond our hospital system into the Detroit community of no fried food and soda pop for 61 days.
Right.
Because soda pop consumption, as innocuous as it seems, accounts for up to 40% of calories in some people's diets. So even something as simple as eliminating soda pop may dramatically alter this profile for women.
Fliegel's findings were attacked by most media outlets that hardly reported on the results, but instead gave most attention to the specialists that argued against them. One white detractor named Dr. Walter Willett, he went on an anti-Fliegel campaign, appearing on every national news station, emphasizing Fliegel's wrong data. He argued that previous studies were accurate, meaning the big fat black woman's high rates of obesity makes them at more risk of death. Willett and others alike perpetuated racist ideals of social distinctions using biased BMI scores, solely relevant to white people to assess health status for black people. They also medically solidified theories of the big fat black woman needing to lose weight before she perishes from obesity. Sabrina Strings says that the medical field has been the most recent institutions to enter the fight against fat phobia. In this way, fat phobia and the desire for slimness are about far more than empirical medical findings. They began as a way of instituting social distinctions. That is, the elites of society have used the denial of food along with social censorships which forbid coarseness and fatness in favor of slimness to prove the superiority of those who sit atop of the social hierarchy. Historically, diet and weight evolved as evidence of high class or low class standing. Moreover, the state, through the institution of medicine, uses guidelines and principles regarding what to eat and how much as a form of social control. This quote describes the sadistic elite white Americans that control society's perception of beauty and use various forms of medicine to push the ideals of the big fat black woman and thin white perfect female specimen. Initially, the elites had accomplished their sadistic goals for a long time, until white men could no longer control their lust for the fat, ugly black woman. European men naturally love black women, especially when they're shaking their butts. Author Bell Hooks wrote a book called Black Looks, Race and Representation, where she explains the black female body being the white man's fantasy. Bell says that a similar white European fascination with the bodies of black people, particularly black female bodies, was manifest during the career of Josephine Baker. Content to exploit white eroticization of black bodies, Baker called attention to the butt in her dance routines. Phyllis Rose, though often condescending in her recent biography, Jazz Cleopatra, Josephine Baker in Her Time, perceptively explores Baker's concentration on her ass. She handled it as though it were an instrument, a rattle, something apart from herself that she could shake. While white society was pushing the big fat black woman myth and simultaneously satisfying their thirst for black women by exploiting their butts for profit, black men decided to express their love for the black female body through their art. Bell Hooks says, contemporary thinking about black female bodies, the fascination with black butts continues. In the sexual iconography of the traditional black pornographic imagination, the protruding butt is seen as an indication of a heightened sexuality. Contemporary popular music is one of the primary cultural locations for discussions of black sexuality. In song lyrics, the butt is talked about in ways that attempt to challenge racist assumptions that suggest that it is an ugly sign of inferiority, even as it remains a sexualized sign. The popular song, Doin' the Butt, fostered the promotion of a hot new dance favoring those who could protrude their buttocks with pride and glee. A scene in Spike Lee's film School Days depicts an all-black party where everyone is attired in bathing suits dancing, doing the butt. It is one of the most compelling moments in the film. In 1992, rapper Sir Mix-a-Lot dropped his hit, Baby Got Back, which spent 5 weeks at the top of the charts. It was another song with lyrics that manifested controversy over black women's butt, exposing the male species' love for big black butts. Also, Baby Got Back was iconic in that it highlighted the racism towards and jealousy that white women possesses of the black female body in the very beginning of the song, when it says, "Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. It is so big. She looks like one of those rap guys' girlfriends." And then they go on and on and on. Now, after revealing the racist and envious attitudes of white women towards black female bodies in his lyrics, Sir Mix-a-Lot then exposed the perception of social consensus of black men about black butts when he said, "I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny that when a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get sprung." Songs like this paved the way for the curvaceous black woman's body shape to be viewed as appealing, opposed to fat and ugly. However, just as hip-hop was glamorizing the black female body, modern black men, especially on social media, decided to ignite campaigns to slander black women and their shapes. Influential YouTube creators such as the late Kevin Samuels detracted the appealing black woman ideals, spewing stereotypical propaganda about black beauty. Now, Kevin Samuels was a 56-year-old metrosexual black man with the questionable sexuality that vilified black women because he felt they didn't meet European standards of beauty. His animosity and aggression towards black women were so severe that allegedly it caused him to perish from hypertension. Samuels was notorious for publicly humiliating their body shapes and other characteristics, perpetuating white ideas of black beauty and femininity. His audience was comprised of black men and women that considered most black women fat, masculine, undesirable, and unrealistic in their expectations of obtaining a high value or high earning man. This man had black women on his show with the body type that he disrespectfully compared to a running back football player just for views.
You weighed more than a man at your height. True or false?
I'm
True
around a lot of chubby dudes, so
No, but okay. How much do you weigh?
220.
I weigh 210 and I'm 6'4". You broke the first rule. See, you ladies don't mind breaking the rules. The men are visual. The men want women that are fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, submissive. I don't mind being the size of, I'm sorry, you're 5'8"?
I'm 5'8".
You're about the size of Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders was. You're a running back size.
Okay.
You can hit the A gap like a motherfucker.
Okay. All right. I accept
So don't
that.
come in here and talk about what men should not be able to do when they got to accept somebody who can run out the power I.
Okay.
I mean, I'm being
But
silly.
at the same time, no.
I'm
You
being
have to be
silly
realistic.
because to make a point that modern women are so full of righteous indignation, what you are and ain't going to accept and all this other kind of stuff, when you're not even what most men want.
Now, notice in the video when Samuels referred to the dark-skinned black woman as a running back, the other dark-skinned black girl didn't find his comments funny at all. Metrosexual Kevin Samuels actually compared the scale weight and size of a black woman to a full-grown man. This man was 6'4" and weighed 200 pounds, which means he was long and lanky, just like white Aryan supermodels. And he actually expected all black women to weigh less and be shaped smaller than he was. Kevin Samuels focused so much on the scale number of a woman, comparing it to athletic men, and this is what made his sexuality questionable. He contended that black women's physique be that of white people, especially the women. This is the epitome of a white imitating, subjugated, sexually questionable black man that possessed a patriarchal white supremacist mentality. The average black woman simply isn't meant to be a slim, tall, and slender white European Aryan female ideal that's been circulating throughout society since the 1600s. Most black women are similar to the Hottentot women, with thick thighs, big butts, and slim to large waists, which history shows that many white men appreciate and women of no color envy. There are so many modern black men that are slaving for white's acceptance by disrespecting black female bodies. The Samuelites, as I call them, and those alike are growing in online numbers, targeting black women with their white supremacist hate. They are very bitter, insecure, and subjugated men that either was abused by black people in their upbringing, or couldn't get their preferred black woman, or just worship whiteness. And it doesn't matter how undesirable the black man is. He will arrogantly judge what he considers to be a big fat black woman on public platforms.
You know somebody that actually make good music, man? Lizzo.
Lizzo?
Yeah, bro. Have you heard her shit, yo? Like, as a songwriter, yo.
I can't get past the fact that she looks like the shit emoji.
Yo.
Very beautiful girl. She's got a very pretty face. But she keeps showing her body off, nigga. Like, come on, man. Come on, yo. I'm sorry. Listen, I ain't the most in shape nigga in the world. But I still, you know, when you funny and you got swagger and confidence and you decent looking, I think I'm at least handsome, you get pussy. But a woman that's built like a plate of mashed potatoes is in trouble.
Yo, what up? It's your boy, Aries Spears. I had to put the Yankee on for this one. Listen, I know I'm trending right now because of the Lizzo joke. And I just want to say, man, a lot of you women are funny, you know, with the critiques. I ain't funny, I'm fat, unattractive, no woman wants me. They always try to hurt you with what works for you the most. That's what they try to hurt. That's like you break up and you go, that's why you got a little wee-wee and you can't screw. But you've been with him for years. I'm 32 years in this game and I ain't funny. I'm 32 years in this game and I ain't never got no meow. That's hilarious. Y'all don't deal in logic and sense. You deal in emotion and anger. Come with something that's not subjective. Me being unfunny, unattractive, that's not a fact. That's subjective. Stop leading with emotion and anger and come with facts. You heard me? DM me for the link to the Spears and Steinberg podcast. And if there's any women out there that want to give me some meow for some of this, holla at me.
Gazing at Aries Spears' visually assaulting face, watching him confidently spew white supremacist propaganda about rapper Lizzo's body shape just shows the severity of his subjugated and oppressed mental state. Aries Spears is a failed comedian that was expected to be the next Eddie Murphy of his time, but botched that too. Being the catastrophe that he is, his colonized mind actually encouraged him to publicly disrespect the black woman that made it to superstardom despite failing to meet white aesthetic standards. Lizzo is a tall, beautiful black woman that's bigger than average, and therefore she's vilified. Many black men are on a campaign of destruction against Lizzo's self-esteem, and they're angry because it isn't working. Nobody cares about Lizzo's size and weight because she's extraordinarily talented. Lizzo can sing, dance, play instruments, and give entertaining shows. But because her physique fails European standards of beauty, Spears and those alike publicly insults her, especially when questioned about her talent. But you know what? Faison Love spoke out against Aries Spears for disrespecting Lizzo and exposed him as the disappointment that he is. Let's take a look.
Man, how did you feel about the interview that I did with Aries Spears and his comments about Lizzo? Him saying that she looked like a shit emoji and she built like a plate of mashed potatoes.
You got to know the story of Aries. The comments in itself are stupid. I mean, Lizzo is a phenomenon, and she's really talented. So, and he's not so talented. You know, he's got one gear, and he's not. You know, he's a yo son. But if you know the story of Aries Spears, is the guy they saw on Def Jam as a kid, and when I think he was 14 years old, and they flew him out to Hollywood. These is Hollywood motherfuckers thinking he was gonna be the next Eddie Murphy, and womp, womp. He was so angry. I mean, I was gonna slap the shit out of him one time. It was like, this dumb motherfucker don't know. You know, the Comedy Store, so many motherfuckers was gonna whoop his ass because he was this cocky kid. He would get deals, and it was like him and Dave Chappelle would get all these deals. South and Sunset was one of the shows, and they would go nowhere, like womp, womp. So he was so cocky because they have built his head up. I mean, he walked like Eddie Murphy. He had the little hat on. Remember Eddie Murphy had the hat, the golden child hat? This nigga was wearing the golden child hat, and he was like, everything was it's like, fuck out of here, nigga. With that. So that's who he is. So his biggest claim to fame is what?
I don't know, man. I guess it would be him impersonating Jay-Z and DMX, right?
You don't even know.
Overall, it's perfectly natural for black women to recognize flaws on their bodies. Nobody is perfect, and beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, meaning the person who possesses the eyes, yourself. However, for black women to obsess over their appearance to the point of potentially acquiring the mental illness BDD is unacceptable, especially considering their body shapes have been persecuted for racist purposes.
The Western world revolves around the Eurocentric idea of beauty, and we're taught that to not fit in is wrong, it's awkward. And echoes of fat shaming happens every day in our everyday lives. Feelings of sayings like, "Oh, I feel fat today," usually echoed by white women. I don't have that luxury of being able to say, "I feel fat today" as a female. I'm visibly fat, and my fat isn't in the right places, but it's presented to me in the hypersexualized body of the plus-size body movement. No, I'm an apple, and my fat is all in the wrong places, or so it would seem. The Westernized standard of beauty marginalizes, it creates exclusionary spaces, it makes us feel inadequate, it makes us feel as though we're wrong. And if white women can't reduce it, then how am I, as a black woman, able to? I'm fat, I'm black, and I'm a woman.
It's your individual responsibility, black women, to look into the mirror and love what you see. And when you encounter other black women, you must see yourself in them and thus love them too. Understanding how racism and politics shape perceptions of blackness, especially as it relates to the black female body, many black women have given up on comparing themselves to a white standard. These women have mastered spirituality and learned to enforce the 3 virtues of Kamene philosophy in their lives, and this includes control of thought, control of action, and devotion of purpose. Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene wrote a book titled Spirituality Before Religions. Spirituality is unseen science. Science is seen spirituality, where he explains the significance of the 3 virtues. He says that you cannot have an image in the mirror if you do not have an image to be reflected. Therefore, spirituality is the thought of the Creator within us, and ritual is the deed of the Creator within us. So to know self, I want to know me. I want to think, see, hear, smell, taste, and feel, but I cannot because I am spirit. Therefore, to know self is to proclaim, I am the Creator having a human experience. African ancestors lived by these virtues, and despite the enslavement, brutality, and condemnation of their bodies, they couldn't be broken. These women persevered despite all social odds against them. Therefore, curvaceous black women must not let their African ancestors, who spent their entire lives under criticism for their natural bodies, suffer in vain. They must stop financially and physically, mentally, and emotionally abusing themselves to achieve European standards of beauty. The only way to end the ideals of the big fat black woman is for black women to reject them and love their bodies, regardless of societal ideals of attraction. Alright, study group, so go ahead and leave some comments below. Do you agree with my commentary? What size do you believe society refers to as the big fat black woman? Size 10, 12, 16, 18? Do you think this myth is fading, especially now that we have like plus size models? Or is it still as prevalent as it was in the 17th century? Does social media play a role in perpetuating the myth? If so, how? Let me know your thoughts. Also, if you have any topics that you'd like for me to cover, please send them to blackhistorystudent@gmail.com. This email is listed in the description section below. If you're interested in reading any of the books that I've referenced in this commentary, I've listed them in the description section below. And if you decide to purchase them, please do so using my affiliate links because I do receive a little commission for each sale and you will be supporting the channel by doing so. If you would like to read the article on this topic, please follow the link in the description section or visit blackhistorystudent.com. Finally, if you haven't done so already, like the video. If you're new, subscribe, and if you loved it, share it. Until next time, bye study group.